Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Stop texting me, everyone.
You tightening up over there? Tightening up?
A little bit.
Last ones.
A little bit. Last one standing. Well, I mean, we were, one of the last two. I think we sussed this out a week ago. I'm like, Seattle wants MacDonald. I think we figured that one out. That's what they were waiting for. They could have hired Dan Quinn a week ago. They didn't. They were waiting for Baltimore to go out of the playoffs, and they moved relatively quickly and probably real fast when all of a sudden we got a fast one pulled on us yesterday in Detroit.
Right.
For all who don't think that he was not the top candidate, they can pretend that he wasn't, but he was, obviously. And we can't make him want the job.
That's right.
Can't make him want the job.
Yeah.
It would have been nice if he had told us this a little bit earlier, though. Which is the only thing I would say to him. Like yesterday, my point to him kind of was a little bit like, what you've done here is a bit unprofessional. And honestly, like holding up, billionaires is really not smart business moving forward. But that's just professional advice for you to live with later.
That's right.
In general, you've kind of left us looking like we are waiting on something or we've got some big surprise that we're going to pull out. And if the Commanders were so hell-bent on signing Dan Quinn, it would have happened a week ago.
Right.
So he may still be the head coach, and maybe it's Anthony Weaver, and I don't know, do they bring in Mike Vrabel and talk to him now? Because he's, would you describe him as best available of the ex-coaches, to give him a second chance? Maybe. Bobby Slowick's off the board now because he re-signed on some bigger deal to stay in Houston, so he's taking himself out of the whole thing. So this has been a turn of events. I thought like everybody thought, and I was pretty convinced. While I never believed it was totally a slam dunk, it was so clear that's who they wanted. And for some reason, he had a change of heart. I actually have a quote from him. You want to hear it?
If this is the long one on Twitter, Nikki corrected this. He said this last year, not recently.
Okay.
So
that's not from today. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But everyone kind of said, if he said that last year, the sentiments are probably the same.
Okay. Well, then I don't want to read it then if that is not the one that he said, because I was under the impression that was said yesterday as to why he did it. But he gave a long reason about being with his wife, and they talked about it, and they just decided they like where they are. They like being where they are, and they just don't feel the necessity to do it now. And I get the sense that it's the same situation here.
He did say Amon-Ra St. Brown does I think he's on with the 33rd team, I want to say, or he has his own pod or whatever. He said that Johnson called him yesterday morning, not being able to sleep, and he said something along the lines of, I feel like we have unfinished business here. So it wasn't a definitive, I don't want to be a head coach, but he was still feeling that yesterday, those same sentiments.
Yeah. Schlereth put one out there that I thought was interesting where he said he believed that Johnson really wanted to go to the Chargers, that's the job that he wanted.
Better roster.
For Herbert,
for sure.
Herbert. But like the Chargers obviously went in a different direction. And then I guess, at that point, he's got to make a decision about what he wants to do. And I'm not here to tell him how to live his life. Go do whatever you want with your professional life. I think you've made a bit of a mistake, professionally, but we'll see, when it comes around. Like, it's not just us. It's a lot of teams wanted to talk to you. You keep turning them down.
Yeah.
I've learned this with these billionaires. They don't like that, and they remember it, and you're dead to them after that. So listen, I'm just, I'm not trying to cast any ill will on them. I'm just saying, like, understand that, like, you're the hot name right now, and if your offense isn't as good next year, you may not be the hot name again, and then the people won't be flying to you to try to hire you. And, oh, by the way, they are going to remember that you kind of strung them along a little bit here. If I'm Josh Harris and company, I'm never considering him again. Because clearly they waited to speak to him, and then he got cold feet.
Yep.
And whatever. I mean, it's his life. Like, I'm not I don't want anybody here who doesn't want to be here. Like, I'm on the Tomlin camp. We don't have hostages.
Sure. Yeah.
You want the job, you want the prestige, you want the responsibility, you want the money, and you want to be all in on it. Great. We want you here. If you're not checking off all those boxes, I don't actually want you here. So if you're sitting at home hemming and hawing about that you love Detroit and you have unfinished business and you don't want to leave, or you just don't feel like you're ready to be a head coach, or you just fine.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna I got to convince you to do something that might be good for your career. Like you got to have your own career, have it. you may be a coordinator for life, though, by doing things like this. I mean, you're probably dead to Tepper, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
I would think you're kind of dead to these guys now because they did wait for you. They were flying to see you when you told them that you're having cold feet. So, you broke up at the wedding chapel. I mean, that's not going to, it doesn't mean they were definitively going to offer you the job, but they were clearly going to talk to you to try to convince you to take the job.
Right.
And as long as your demands, there's been a lot of weird reporting about what he was asking for. And I don't know the truth of all that, like whether he was asking for things that were really kind of abnormal for someone who's never coached before. And maybe, if that's what's going to entice you, you have to get this deal to want it and not take something that's like, they're not trying to get you on the cheap, dude. Like everybody's been trying to hire you. So they're going to give you a market value deal. But if that's not good enough and you want what Belichick got, then that could be a problem. But I don't know whether that's true or not. I think his agent did a disservice here. I think he's done himself a disservice here. Like there's, it's fine. I mean, I don't want you here if you don't want to be here. We'll find a coach. Like I'm not worried about that part. There's still very good candidates available, but just kind of putting a button on him, like clearly Seattle had same idea. Like they waited. Why? Because they wanted somebody specific and they got the deal done and probably were encouraged to do it quickly after Ben Johnson surprised everybody yesterday. So they went and got their deal done. Washington now is in the holding pattern and they're going to hire, whoever they hire, and they're going to tell you that was their first choice. But I think we all know what the score was here. They were waiting out to see if he was willing to take the job. And unfortunately, they waited too long because he didn't come to this conclusion a week ago, which that's all I wish he did, or a day ago. I mean, before the interview came,
Sure.
Just any time before yesterday morning or afternoon, but when they were flying there, to say to us and to Seattle, listen, I've changed my mind. That would have been helpful to know. And if he's been waffling the whole time, then it is incumbent on Washington to know that and probably have moved in a different direction quickly, because I've also found that if someone isn't gung-ho about something that's like, I don't know, one of 32 in the world, then you're probably not going to convince them to do it either. Like, he's got to want it. He clearly didn't, for whatever reasons he's got. And unfortunately, now we're sitting here and they're circling the wagons a little bit, and it doesn't look great. I mean, like obviously they wanted who they wanted. There's no way around that part of it. I still think they'll get a really good, viable head coach, but everybody's heart was set on a couple of different things happening, and now neither one of them are going to happen.
On Johnson, though, what I want to know is, did the Commanders just think they had a better shot? Because clearly now what it sounds like is all those other teams found out, oh, we don't even know if he wants to be a head coach now. We've got to go in a different direction.
I read that as he was communicating, you all know where I'm going.
But now
but now in hindsight, it's looking like they were like, I don't know if this guy wants to do this. We just have to move on.
We got to start moving the dominoes here, because
Correct.
Once one falls, we all start moving along. And then
Correct.
Harbaugh, Morris, and whoever else got hired.
Right. There were a couple, like Atlanta waited on Harbaugh. Or Belichick and whatever happened with Belichick.
Yeah.
And then they've turned to Harbaugh. Well, the Chargers went, oh crap, and they got the deal done.
Yep.
Atlanta immediately moved. Well, like when they didn't even really wait for the in-person interview with Johnson, I read that as his people told him, you already know where I'm going. Just do what you need to do. But that apparently wasn't the case. Now, was his people communicating, listen, I'm not sure what he's going to do whenever their season is over, so make your mind up that way? I don't know. And if he was saying the same thing to Washington, like this is all, we're speculating now. If he said the same thing to Washington, then it probably would have behooved them to just move on, like Atlanta did, like Carolina did, like Tennessee did, like Seattle did. Like they immediately moved. Like, did they eye him as the number one choice too? I don't know. The second they got that, they moved on fast. And so, I mean, to sit there and go, he wasn't a top or the top candidate, I think there's too much proof otherwise. And plan B, was just to sit in a holding pattern and wait. And Dan Quinn is going to happily take this job. I mean, like, he clearly wants it. Like, he wants to be a head coach again. He clearly wants it. They're in a different position with him now because there's nowhere else for him to go, and Seattle's not even out there. So I guess if they're negotiating with him, it'll be different. But I wonder how it's going to land a little different, and it shouldn't. He's a viable head coach. We've seen what he's done in Dallas. He's been to a Super Bowl before. But, I read social media like everybody else, and everybody had their heart set on something happening that is clearly not going to happen. So unless they hire Anthony Weaver, out of Baltimore, who is new, fresh, and you have to buy in like new, fresh, they're going to get a guy who's been around the block before. And for some reason, there's been a kind of a recoiling to a little bit of that. I haven't tested the waters on Vrabel yet because they haven't even talked to him. So he never was considered really a viable candidate. But at this point, it's hard for me not to consider that they'd have to think about talking to him at this. I mean, if they've waited this long and their only job open, I don't know. Do you keep waiting? But at that point, then, is Dan Quinn when?
Yeah, right.
At some point, he's going to be
at some point.
Yeah,
I mean,
you do have to want to feel like you're the guy at some point.
100%. I mean, the other part here on MacDonald too is he got a 6-year deal from Seattle. I mean, I think we can all guess what probably happened over the last 24 hours. The second it got down to 2, and then Johnson took his name out. He's like
MacDonald probably went, my wife used to be a cheerleader for the Washington Redskins, and I also live in that area.
Right.
And, oh, by the way, they're very interested in young, fresh, new minds, so you might want to, amp it up a little bit.
Make sure I don't leave the building, essentially, is what happened.
The leverage changed for him significantly.
Yes.
Whether it was real or not that Washington wanted him, Seattle had to have been scared at that moment, and they, like Washington waiting out Johnson, they were waiting, and it's so clear as day now they were waiting him out. I sussed this out last week. I'm like, what are they waiting for? They could have hired Dan Quinn. They're waiting for this guy. Obviously, they're waiting for this guy.
I think overall, we need to zoom out a little bit and think maybe this job wasn't as desirable as we all thought it was.
I don't know.
I think you have to look. I think you have to be realistic on someone coming in here. They're going, yeah, you got the number 2 overall pick. It means I have to pick a quarterback. It means if that quarterback fails, I'm probably getting fired. And then they take a look at the roster, and the 2 to 3 best players are Terry McLaurin, Payne, and Allen, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's here, though. And if you're looking from the outside, you're going, those are the best players you have to work with. I
hear you, but then why was Houston, like a viable spot? D'Amico Ryans had interest in other places.
Sure.
He took that, partially because he played there, but you couldn't have looked at that and gone, oh, well, that's going to turn around real fast.
Sure. But I will say this, they're going to have half the roster under free agency, so they're going to have to re-sign a bunch of guys.
I don't know. I have a hard time buying the jobs aren't that attractive. I think they all are on some level. They're one of 32. You always, people always forget that part. I think the Tepper stuff's a little weird right now, but he gave a guy who was getting no interviews anywhere else, not to say he doesn't deserve the job, but he wasn't getting a tremendous amount of interest. They gave him a 6-year deal because of reputation, but they still got the guy they wanted.
Yeah,
he took the job. The same thing's happened here. Everyone said this about Dan for years. Oh, nobody will go work for him. Really? Mike Shanahan did. Marty Schottenheimer did. Joe Gibbs did. Ron Rivera did. They all did. Steve Spurrier did.
Jim Zorn.
Still, they got high level coaches to take the job.
No, so sure.
It is one of 32. I think it's fair to say that Ben Johnson was the guy they wanted. Look where we are right now. Of course, that's who they wanted. And unfortunately, he decided he didn't want to take any head coaching job.
Yeah.
And because of it, now they're stuck going back to whatever plan B is. And I'm not sure that plan B wouldn't have been MacDonald or wouldn't have been Raheem Morris. But now they're off the table suddenly because they didn't move fast enough. And this is, maybe they should have been, maybe the lesson learned here is they should have gotten him a little more on the record. But my gut says that they had a different understanding of what was about to happen, and he changed his mind.
Right.
But I could be wrong about that. I'm speculating a little bit here, but it feels that way, that the reality was that this is who they really wanted to try to get. They were willing and open to talk to other people. They were pushing a narrative that it was not a slam dunk, which clearly it wasn't, and it sounds like for reasons that have come up here now. But it does feel like they were going to go there and convince him, hey, man, this is your chance. Take it. We're going to give you a really nice deal. You're going to work with this new GM. He's got a great reputation. You got the number 2 overall pick. We got a lot of cap room. We're not going to expect you to win overnight. We're not going to put that kind of pressure on you. And you're going to come in here and we'll get the ball rolling. We're ready to go. And I'm sure that they felt like that was a good sell. Right. And I don't know, what was he scared to say no to Magic Johnson? He didn't want to walk in the room with him? What is it? He didn't want to say no to Bob Myers. He didn't want to walk into a room and get awestruck a little bit and go, I can't say no to these people. So he said, you know what? I can't have a meeting with them at all. And by doing that, he pulled the rug out from under him, really. But, again, if all of their eggs were in that basket and he was waffling the whole time, then it is a little bit on them to not go, hey, man, you need to tell us if you're serious about this. And if you're not serious about this, we will have to move on. But if you are, we'll wait you out. And so something got crossed up here. I mean, did he wake up on his wedding day and have a change of heart? Okay, maybe. It's possible? Or was he waffling the whole time and they just weren't hearing it and just expected him to go, how can he turn this down? What 37-year-old offensive coordinator doesn't want opportunity to do this and start from scratch? Why wouldn't you want that? But he doesn't.
Well, and
he doesn't.
What did happen, though, is that did start setting the precedent. You started hearing all the other coordinators that got extensions or more money yet last night.
Yeah.
Because that was the second part of it. All the other guys, like Slowick and some of the other candidates, all of a sudden were like, oh, he's returning too. He's returning too. This guy's returning there.
I think Houston moved because they went, crap, Washington might, if they wanted Ben Johnson, they may turn to him immediately.
Right.
And so they're like, we need to lock you up. And he's sitting there going, it's possible they don't hire me anyway, so I might as well take the upgraded position and the money. I can always leave for a head coaching job at a later date.
Right.
But it locks him up for a year, and so what? No harm, no foul. It's worth doing that. With Dan Quinn, he wants the job.
Right.
He's wanted either one of them, Seattle or Washington, and he may or may not get either one of them. And boy, he's going to feel scorned.
Well, yeah.
If he doesn't get it. And, listen, I don't know how closely they should listen to the fan base, but the fan base is kind of yelling and screaming, at least the loud ones on Twitter, that they don't like this hire. And I don't really totally understand it, honestly. I think he's done a really good job, and I know what his reputation is, and I know people who've played for him, and they say great things about him. So I don't really understand the total backlash to the whole thing. I just think everybody had their heart on someone else. Now that it's not happening, they're unwilling to do this again. And it does feel a little repetitive of, here's a guy who had a 500 record in that division coming here, and it feels like a little retreading, and I guess that's what it is. But I mean, he is not Ron Rivera, so I don't really totally understand why you can't separate it and believe that maybe he'll be good at this.
From the reaction,
the Falcons hired Raheem Morris. He was a coach before. Everyone applauded it. I don't get it. Really.
From the reaction last night, it seems to be that he got them to the Super Bowl, but then as soon as Kyle Shanahan left, it all fell apart, and then they went 0-5 the second year without Shanahan, essentially. And that's what got him and I think the former GM fired as well. But their former GM as well, I forget who it was, hasn't even worked in the NFL. So it's how good was personnel as I'm just saying.
Yeah, that matters.
There's a multitude of factors here. I think what we're getting at here, though, is just as important as Quinn is who are his coordinators going to be. Because I think that's what's going to have to quell the fan base here.
That's everything.
Yeah. So
I did see some tweets that were reasonable that said, everybody who's upset that we didn't get 30-something coordinators who've never been a head coach before. Some of them turn out to be McVay or Shanahan or Joe Gibbs, for that matter, or Mike Tomlin.
Sure.
And some become Brandon Staley.
That's right. Exactly. Who literally was told, or was said this year that he didn't know how to communicate with his
or
players.
Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels worked under Belichick. He was a can't-miss head coaching candidate and twice failed badly.
That's right.
And he also pulled what Ben Johnson pulled once and changed his mind at the last minute and felt like it wasn't for him.
Yeah,
and
right.
So, listen, this guy, I just wish he would have made his intentions known a little sooner. I wish he would have made up his mind a little bit sooner. It probably is hard to say no to something like this, and he strung it out, and unfortunately he woke up after losing the other day and felt like, I just can't do this right now, and that's fine. It's his life. But it did put this team in a bind for sure, because that's what they waited for, obviously. They waited to talk to him, and unfortunately it was too late. And the other team waited to talk to somebody else, but that was their guy, and he's willing to take the job. So Washington swooping in, stealing their candidate was going to be hard to pull off, because it's so clear as day now that's what Seattle was looking for the whole time, because they got quiet and waited out the whole process, and they got their guy, so good on them.
Yeah.
Dan Quinn may be next. And as far as MacDonald, let me just talk about him for a minute.
Yep.
I said this a lot over the last week, and I sussed this thing out. This is a good hire for them, just from the perspective of just go watch what his team specifically did against these offenses that Shanahan and McVay and McDaniel and Houston, Slowick, and what they're running, they're all running variations of this same tree offense that's proliferated around the NFL and is largely among the top 10 offenses in the league when they have the right type of talent to have top 10 offenses. That's what's really, I mean, Miami had the best offense in the league. San Francisco's got one of the best offenses in the league. They're doing it with the last pick in the draft. Houston turned around quickly. Granted, I think C.J. Stroud has a lot to do with that, but obviously, they turned around really, really, really fast. The Rams have had a really good offense for a long period of time under McVay. Kevin O'Connell's offenses were terrific when Cousins was healthy and they weren't going through quarterback after quarterback. LaFleur's offense suddenly looks like it's working again now that Jordan Love. So, they're working. Here's the guy who's coming into a division that has to deal with two of those coaches that aren't going anywhere twice a year. It makes too much sense to me. It does. It makes too much sense to me. And I when they got real quiet, I'm like, it's so clear as day that's the guy they want. And it totally makes sense. Why not go after the guy who could counter those offenses? So I think it was the right move for them to get him. I feel like it really was. And we were probably never seriously in consideration because we thought we had Ben Johnson. They knew they had Mike MacDonald. They just had to wait it out. Otherwise, they'd be sitting here like we are going, if he had changed his mind or did something like that, I think they would have been surprised.
This is also where Schefter comes in as well, where it all makes sense. Schefter knew it was MacDonald, and probably that's why he kept saying one of those two isn't going to happen. He just wasn't.
Well, he said
who.
about Quinn, and I went, well, it's going to be Ben Johnson here. It's going to be Mike MacDonald there, which makes Schefter right.
Right.
That's what I thought it was. Initially, we all thought Quinn's going to be the head coach in Seattle. They've had a chance to hire him for 3 weeks.
Yep. Right.
They didn't do it. Mm-hmm. Why didn't they do it? Right. They were waiting for this guy. And, as it stands right now, they did the right thing because he probably was their clear plan B. Yep. And if this guy pulled what Ben Johnson did or went to Washington because they get surprised by that, then they would have hired Quinn and it would have made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So they were sitting there at the ready for this. The second Ben Johnson pulled out, it probably forced them to give an extra year on the deal or something like that just to make sure it gets done. Because now Washington is suddenly looking for someone, and it's logical that they would go want to talk to him and want to try to pull a deal here. So let's see where it goes next. I mean, I'm expecting either Anthony Weaver or Dan Quinn to be the next head coach here, but I think it's anyone's guess at this point because it's so clear as day who they wanted, and they're not going to get him that I don't know where they're going to turn. So, and I mean, I do expect it to happen soon now.
What's
I still think in the next 24, 48 hours, we'll have a coach here.
Right.
And I want to see how it lands because everybody's heart was set on something happening that clearly didn't happen. So let's see how this whole thing lands now.
It's also going to be a really weird question when whoever asks it goes,
Won't be me.
How did you settle in on, Dan Quinn or whoever it was?
Yeah.
What we know now that he, had to sit there for 3 weeks or whoever they go to.
That's going to be, that's really, I don't care about this perception stuff because it'll go away quickly, but it will open the door to very difficult questions for him specifically.
Yeah.
That he came for in-person meetings, flew up here to do it. It's very obvious he wants the job. And if they do ultimately give it to him, it's going to be so clear that they were waiting out all other options before they decided to hire him. And it's going to be a weird, awkward moment. I won't be asking that question. It's going to be a weird, awkward, and someone will, and they'll have every right to ask it because it will come off as you didn't get your guy. This is second fiddle. And that might be anybody. But if you hire let's say it's Vrabel, because I actually think it's a different situation than him with Quinn because he's been winning a ton lately. He's got a winning record. Maybe people feel differently about it. If they bring in Anthony Weaver, then I think everybody knows that wasn't the first choice, but it's new, fresh. I think you could sell different leadership styles and all that stuff, and they'll still get the same question, but it won't be like Quinn, where for 2 weeks it's been hanging out there that they could hire him. They just haven't chosen to do so. And then they did it because it appears as if options A and B were off the board. And they couldn't convince option A to take any job, let alone theirs.
Right. The only thing that's probably already laid this one out is they're just going to say, oh, they were doing their due diligence. And they told me that the entire time. That's exactly what it's going to be. I mean,
and that's what they're going to have to say. They're going to have, but perception matters. Sure. And, it is going to be perceived initially. Now, once we get to OTAs, no one's going to care anymore.
Oh, that's
no one's going to care anymore.
Yeah.
And once we get to training camp, no one's going to care anymore. And then if they start 2-0, no one's really going to care anymore. Right. I mean, that's the reality of it. And I agree with you. The most important thing to me is I don't care who they hire. Who are the coordinators they're bringing with them?
That's right.
I want to know who his offensive coordinator is. We're probably picking a quarterback at number 2. This is going to be very important who this offensive coordinator is that comes in here.
That's right.
So I want to see who it is.
Exactly.
If it's him if he comes in on defense, I'm pretty convinced he'll probably take somebody off that Cowboy staff and make him our DC, and I think we'll be okay with that. But I want to know who's the offensive coordinator here because that's going to be very important. So we'll see. All right, we'll take a quick break. Brad Watch the Show, ESPN 630 at Sports Capital. Still waiting, guys. Still waiting. See who we get. Oh man, this one's taking a turn I didn't expect. I don't know. I got all juiced up. I'm like, they got their guy for the GM. And then I think we all know what's about to happen here, guys, don't we? And this has been a left turn for sure. I'm surprised. I really am. I don't know. I just expected a different outcome, so I'm surprised.
For me, it's more that there actually isn't even a clear-cut number 2 now either. Like there's not a next logical step.
Yeah, I think it's
3 or 4 that you could say, but now it's all right. Yep, you're the one. All right, come on down.
Yeah, I mean that's why there's part of me that goes, do you take the time to talk to Vrabel before you make a decision? And if you do that, if you're Dan Quinn, you're pissed.
Yeah, you're peeved. Yeah, you're probably withdrawing your name at that point.
Maybe.
I would think you would.
I actually honestly at this point, if I'm him, I would probably consider are you hiring me or not?
Right.
Because I need to know what I'm doing here.
Sure.
And also, I don't need to be hung out any longer.
Well, I've told you this, too. I think with Quinn, the whole thing with him is we don't know what he's demanding, but he also knows full well Jerry loves him.
Yeah.
And that
Jerry has said the job's yours. You can come back to it.
Well, no, but that also, it's McCarthy's last year under contract.
That's right.
So, Jerry doesn't actually like firing coaches early. He let it play out with Garrett. He just let Garrett walk.
That's right.
He could let McCarthy walk and then just elevate Quinn because there's probably some kind of clause in his contract that lets him do that.
Yeah.
So with Quinn, I mean,
get someone else.
Sure,
people are already surmising Belichick again next
course.
year, that type of stuff.
Absolutely.
So,
but I'm sure Quinn is kind of going, this is getting better and better the more time you guys wait. So he could very well just put his hands up and say, I'm good. I don't want to do that anymore. So.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. I mean, obviously they have to pick somebody soon. I mean, so
you think?
I think it would be interesting if they now interview Vrabel. For all we know, they haven't yet. But
right.
Have they? Maybe they have.
Maybe.
They've been kind of, they've been cagey about the whole thing. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. All right. Let's talk about the other humongous thing that occurred, which is the Orioles have been sold.
Yep.
So what was it? Didn't John Angelos deny that this was happening 3 weeks ago or something like that?
Bloomberg, who does a show, Rubenstein does a show on Bloomberg TV. They were the first ones to report that he was going to buy them. Then the state of Maryland had a big, if you're selling, we're not going to give you all this money. And then Angelos came out and did say, we are not for sale.
Right.
Only to sell a month later.
He has. You can't take anything he says for credit, which is
correct.
Really, I mean, and now that he doesn't own the team or won't own the team anymore, it doesn't matter anymore. But he has openly lied.
Yes.
And publicly lied.
Yep.
He did the stupidest one was the reporter where he said to him, "You can come see my books."
Yeah,
because the guy questioned how much money you guys are making. He goes, "Well, you can come see our books as to why we don't spend." And he said, "Tell me what day."
Right.
And it then followed up with his office numerous times. And of course, they're not going to open up their books. It's just a dumb thing to say out loud. And, this is why I didn't trust him with the whole Nashville stuff all along. I'm like, this guy can't be trusted. He says things that aren't true. And here he is saying, why would David Rubenstein say that publicly, which was probably a faux pas to say it out loud.
Sure.
But once he did, what's the point of denying it if it is actually happening? And I think this is the stuff that doesn't matter. This is good for this team.
Yep.
I think we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
I say that reluctantly as a partner of this team, but the reality is what the reality is. There are similar issues, different ones, but similar issues of ownership that were going on here with the Commanders, where the fan base just didn't trust it. And in some cases with the Orioles, I think it's warranted different ways. Like they didn't seem to want to spend.
Yep.
When he said things last fall, like we're not going to give anybody a large extension. And I'm like looking at that team going, you have potentially 3 Hall of Famers on it right now that are all in their, early 20s. And you're telling them publicly, you have no future here because the amount of money that you're going to make, we're just never going to give it to you. I'm like, you guys are going to be in a death spiral forever then. Like, you've just demotivated your stars to play for you. I guess they'd play for themselves to get the contract, but don't you want them to want to play for you and play for the city and play for the brand? And you just basically told them it doesn't matter what you do. You could hit 350 with 70 home runs and we're not going to pay you. Like,
that's right. Yep.
It's crazy.
It's
so
also,
like him saying that was like so nuts. And so there's that. There was this. He and his girlfriend want to take him to Nashville, maybe. They want to own the Inner Harbor, maybe. Right. I don't know.
Yeah,
like there was just, and then the payroll is so low and they just won't do anything, but they have all these studs thanks to the GM, like putting this whole thing together. And this is so good for them. It is such right place, right time. Like anything was right place, right time for the Commanders, obviously, but they're not ready to win at this very moment. That team is.
Yes, correct.
So the fact that they actually are going to get somebody in there that, and who knows, we'll see, but may look at all of that differently, may say, let's go take some runs. They got a shot to be really, really good for at least a 3 to 5 year window before all of these guys' contracts come up, and they do have to make these decisions. Adley Rushman and Gunnar Henderson and then Jackson Holiday, and earlier they'll have to deal with Mullins and some of these others, but they have ridiculous studs on their team. And if you're not going to win now, you're never going to win. So this is really, really good for them. And then I'm glad it's local so we can get over the whole idea of someone trying to sneak off, and move them out, because I do not believe that family, or at least one member of them, when he's like, we'd never move to Nashville. Oh, sure, buddy. And you give out these large statements about how Francis Scott Key and the national anthem and the Orioles, they'll never die. Yeah. And it's like, I don't believe you.
Right.
So I think I'm happy that it's a local. I'll get to the Nationals part of it in a minute, but just largely, I would imagine Orioles fans, and I'm one of them, are breathing a major sigh of relief today that like this, ownership group is moving on, and they're going to get somebody in there with major capital, local ties, not unlike the Commanders organization. Cal Ripken's part of it. I know it matters to him, so it'd be great. We saw the list that includes Grant Hill.
Yeah,
so they've got a star-studded list now, too.
Wes Moore released like a thank you, and he mentioned Grant Hill. I hadn't seen that anywhere, so I don't know if the governor broke news there without saying anything, but I'm with you. I think this was strategic, by the way, by Rubenstein, because I don't know if you looked at the deal, because we know this, and I forget which listener actually let us know this, that the majority of everyone thought that they were not really going to get sold until Peter Angelos passed away because of tax issues. But when I looked last night, somebody had reported they're selling, I think, 40% of the team. That does give Rubenstein the majority. They will still have, the Angeloses will still have 30% of the team. And so what's going to happen?
There's probably a sunset clause at whenever the day comes.
Correct. Exactly.
That they will then...
Yes, sell the remaining. So that's how they got about this. And what I'm getting at here is I think Rubenstein took a look at this and went, I want to buy this team eventually. I'm going to be the guy to buy this team eventually. But some of those contracts are starting to come up. And if you're not going to make the moves on them, I would like to start laying the groundwork. So this dynasty just not just blows up, but just kind of fades away. Like, that's the worst thing you could do, is not get assets back for some of these guys, whatever.
That's
so
right.
I'm guessing things got hot and heavy when he started going, I need to start running the team like this, because I'm not trying to buy a team and then having to do this whole rebuild thing all over again. You're in a really good position.
You can win.
So I think that's
come in and win.
I think this is where it kind of fired up, because last year they win the division without signing basically anybody, just with their guys. And they're going, it's the offseason. You guys haven't signed anybody.
Nothing.
And
you haven't gone and gotten a starting pitcher, which it just screams, what are you doing?
Right.
Like,
so
what are you waiting for? You have a team you can win with. What are you waiting for?
Right. So my guess is he's going, get me in there as fast as I can so I can at least sign a couple of pieces to try to make things a little bit better. That's my thought process on the whole entire thing.
I saw the part where they said the Angelos family would still remain a major investor in it. And I went, I know what that is. That is a tax skirt.
Yep, correct.
If they sell it now, they have to pay taxes on whatever the total number is. But if they technically sell it at a later date, then they don't.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how much of the money actually literally changes hands or whether it remains at some level of escrow and the deal doesn't get completed. I'm not an accountant, but I'm guessing that's what's happening here. That the deal gets completed at a later date when that day comes, whenever that day occurs. But this is good news for the fans, for the team. I think a change in ownership is going to be very good for them. That family's been infighting for a long time. The rumors were forever that family didn't even want to keep the team.
That's right.
Then all of a sudden, he's got a girlfriend in Nashville, and there's a group in Nashville, and I'm starting to get a little bugged out that they're going to do something squirrely that might be terrible for the region, and so this is really good. Then there's
on that too. By the way, I think he did go to Manfred and say, behind closed doors, if I want to move him, what do you think is going to be? And I bet you Manfred was like, no.
They shut it down.
Right. And I think this is what happened.
Once he got boxed in on that, then it became all right. And then what he tried to do was squeeze out a crazy deal from Baltimore.
Yes, correct.
He's like, okay, fine, I'll stay, but I want to own all of the Inner Harbor. And Wes Moore was like, no.
Right.
He's like, we want to partner with you, but like, what are you talking
You're
about?
Not getting that because he's going, Bashani's going to ask me for that too, man.
Then he didn't get that, and then I think the walls closed in. And he went, all right, well, we can either own the team and be adversaries, which is what he's pitted himself as, or we could sell the team, make a lot of money.
Yep.
And that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, as for the Nationals, what does this mean for them? All right, a couple things, but this is all projection at this point. Does David Rubenstein work with the Lerner family and Major League Baseball to end this MASN nonsense once and for all?
Right.
Because forget Ted for a moment. He doesn't own the team yet.
Yep.
Ted would like to own the team, and Ted would also like to have the TV rights, and Ted would like to do it on the Monumental Network, and Ted would like to then charge me more for his subscriptions.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Year round
so,
at that point.
Okay, but he can't do that yet because he doesn't own the Nationals.
That's right.
The Nationals have been waiting for the MASN thing to get cleared up, and there's a baseline price now on the Orioles, and the number for Washington's going to be higher than that. I know people don't want to think that, but it will be because this is a bigger market than Baltimore. But they need to get their broadcasting rights. So this year, I'm going to assume, and I would hope, and again, it's speculation, but I would hope the MASN thing gets taken care of.
Right.
And then the Lerner family at that point will make a decision. Now, remember, they never said they were definitively selling it.
They were open.
They never said they weren't.
That's right. They said they were open. That was the word that was used.
When it came up that they were open to it, I remember thinking at the time, the interesting part about this is Mark and the kids love the franchise.
Yep.
So I was it's not like the Angelos family, where it was a business for a long time. That's not what it was for them. And so I was surprised to hear that. And I think, now in thinking about it, they just tried to get a number because franchises were selling for a certain number. They tried to get a number and just get out from under it because they got a lot of contracts that need to be paid out over time. They don't have a competitive team at the moment. They've already won a World Series. The MASN thing's in perpetuity. They've been in court with these guys forever about it. And maybe they just felt like, you know what? We've built up the Navy Yard. Let's just move on. And then now a year goes by. They don't get the number they want. A year goes by. They're still very quiet about the whole thing. Now the Orioles are being sold. I'm hoping that there's going to be some kind of resolution that works for everybody, right? That gets the Nationals their rights back and keeps the Orioles in a really good place. However that works out, get out of the courts and get this done with because it's stupid that anyone agreed to it in the first place. And then we'll find out where the Nationals are, and then Ted makes the call, and the Lerners now can ask for the number they actually want if they're willing to sell.
Yeah.
And that's the part you don't know, because if the team gets its rights back, maybe they feel differently about it.
Sure.
Maybe if Rizzo puts together a team that looks exciting again, maybe they feel differently about it. So I don't think this is a definitive, now Ted gets it. This is a reset. And the most important thing that needs to happen next is Major League Baseball needs to get together and have reasonable discussions about how to end this MASN nonsense once and for all, secure the Orioles' future, which is done at least by ownership, secure their rights in whatever way that works to help them stay competitive, at least, as a team that can be competitive and not own this other team's rights, because that makes no sense that it would ever occur that way. The Nationals then have their fair value and their fair marketplace, and we can argue with them about what they are and are not spending because they don't have this hanging it up with them anymore, and they are in a major market. So this is all good. It's a big, big, big step one. And it does lead toward whatever the end game is. But I'm assuming we're going to go through the whole baseball season. We're not going to hear about the Nationals being sold, not until MASN is settled.
Of course not.
And then we'll figure it out.
I mean, the other bad side of the coin here, though, is, and what my fear has always been, and I kind of pointed this out on Twitter yesterday, was, Rubenstein, he could be the type of billionaire that goes, oh, well, I paid $1.7 billion for the Orioles because the built-in value was also getting those TV rights. He can say that.
He can.
He can say, I wanted to pay this amount of money because I was getting 2 sets of TV rights.
Right. We think.
Everyone thinks they're going to be everyone thinks it's going to be, now that they're sold, everyone's going to play nice. Billionaires are billionaires for a reason, man. They're cutthroat, and they know what they've got on their hands. And I'm just saying, this too. I've seen enough billionaires do some crazy things in the process of some of this stuff to not play nice when it comes to these things. Now, if Ted buys the Nats, like this could be another part of this. I'm just putting full tinfoil hat here. He could say, I'm going to keep the rights here, and I'm going to do what I want with them, and whether it's MASN Digital or whatever the hell it is, and then try to squeeze the learners out. And then when Ted goes and buys the Nats, he could go, I'll work with you, Ted. I'll try to get you your TV rights back. That could be another part of this. I just know billionaires do crazy things, man. And it's not as cut and dry as all of this. Now, you would think the MLB owners would not approve this unless they can dissolve the MASN stuff. But, you don't know that.
One step at a time. But, sure. I like to think that this is going to get worked out. But I always thought Ted should buy the Orioles for that purpose alone.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Maybe, how do we know he's not buying them? How did he not say, or is he not going to say, well, I thought the Orioles were worth $1.5 billion, but because they have 2 sets of TV rights, I think they're worth an extra $200 million a year, or $200 million in the purchase price.
Right.
So that's what I'm getting at here. Everyone that says, it's the first step to all this being dissolved, you don't know what he's thinking. You don't know what he's going to pound the table for, because he's going to point to that text and say, does this not say in perpetuity? And all of the MLB owners are going to go, he's right. It says in perpetuity.
Yeah,
what are we going to do?
In perpetuity.
So I'm just getting, it's not going to be as clear cut as everyone thinks until it actually is dissolved.
There is a news release from Rubenstein's camp confirming the deal. Members of the partnership group do include Kurt Schmoke, who used to be the mayor in Baltimore, Cal Ripken Jr., Grant Hill, Michael Bloomberg of Bloomberg, and former mayor of New York, ran for president, you'll recall. And how about that? She's taken over the world. Michelle Kang is part of the investment group.
Okay.
Part of this is the owner of the Spirit as well. All right. Better times, everybody. Better times.
We'll see.
Better times.
I
do have some advice for them. If they do ever decide that Brandon Hyde needs to go, don't call Ben Johnson. Whatever you do, so don't call Ben Johnson.
I will say this, by the way. They went for 1.7.
Yeah.
The Nationals and the Learners, when they said they were quote unquote open, the number was anywhere from $2 billion to $2.5 billion.
Yeah.
The Mets sold for 2.4.
Yeah.
You're not selling for more than the Mets, but you should sell for more than the Orioles. And so
it's Washington, D.C. You should, but you're not going to sell more than the New York team.
Correct. And so I'm just saying here, that number's probably going to be around 2.
Yes.
And that sounds about right. So there's no more excuses anymore. You have both sides of the coin. The Mets went for 2.4, Orioles 1.7.
That's right.
You're going for a little more than the O's. You're not being closer to the Mets. And you also, by the way, we don't know what all that deferred money looks like, playa. There's a lot of extra money that's going to be coming for a losing franchise.
That's right.
So,
all right, let me take a quick break. I want to read you this piece, the plant piece for Ted next. Brad, watch the show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. Reminder, I will be out doing the show live from Radio Row Wednesday through Friday next week at the Super Bowl. And the list of guests is starting to grow. It's going to be good. We got a lot. Lee Steinberg's coming on, Mike Lombardi, Rod Woodson. I'm working on some other ones that I don't want to name yet because they're big, high-profile guests, and they haven't confirmed yet, so I want to make sure. But they've been pitched to me, so that's always the good sign.
That's right,
I'm expecting should be a good one. Let me see. I'll do the TED piece at the top of the hour because I need to read some of this. It's going to take a little bit of time. I will say this, though. The reports on the asking price for Kyle Kuzma at the trade deadline has softened a lot. Shams is now saying, initially they were reporting the Wizards are open for business with everybody but Bilal, remember?
Yep, right.
And then they said the asking price is 2 first-round picks for Kyle Kuzma, and Shams is now reporting that that's softened a little bit.
Okay, so at least one, I would hope.
I think it's got to be one to get him out.
It's got to be, yeah, I agree.
Because they have him under contract for, I don't remember how long the extension was, but it was a couple of years. And I don't feel like this is not a giveaway.
Correct. Yeah. I always thought.
This is not a giveaway.
He signed a 4-year extension.
Yeah,
so
I'm not.
You got 4 postseason runs.
Yeah. If there was a team in San Diego, we'd get a good deal back for him. Or one that might be a good deal. We'll find out,
That's
won't
right.
we?
Yeah, we don't know that yet.
We don't know that yet. I am glad that the tenor and tone has changed on that a little bit. Like, I don't want him given away. We gave away Rui last year. It pissed me off. Like, when they just gave him away. Like, he's not Kuzma, but he's still a very good player, and we got literally nothing for him. So I don't want to give away here, and I don't want to give away the roster. So I hope Winger and company are treating it that way. But 2 first-round picks did sound aggressive for him.
Yeah, I would say this too, though. The market changed last year. Like, remember, no first-round picks got traded last year.
Right, but who got moved? I can't remember. There was nobody prominent that got moved, right?
KP got moved. KP got
Oh,
traded.
that's right.
I mean, he got moved for some first-round picks, but it was only 1 or 2, and then everyone else was second-round picks. So that's what the market was. As soon as we saw, who was the Miami trade last week? Do you remember?
That was Terry Rozier.
And then there was one other one I thought too, where either way, first-round picks started to get moved, and if you're the Wizards, you're going, we're taking the first. We're taking the first-round picks now. I think it's where it changed. So.
All right, so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
We got a couple weeks left for the deadline.
Right.
All right, here's this one from the NBA. I can't believe Jason Kidd said this. Have you seen this?
Mm-mm.
Where he said Luka Doncic is the best player in Mavericks history.
Okay, better than Dirk. All right.
Yes, he said during an appearance on the Dallas radio station 97.1 The Freak.
It's a good radio station. 97.1 The Freak.
The Freak.
He's like, ow.
He said Doncic belongs in the conversation with Michael Jordan and others on the short list of greatest players in NBA history.
Stop.
Then added, he's better than Dirk. He's in the atmosphere of MJ, the best to ever do it. LeBron James, Kobe Bryant. And so just to appreciate what this young man is doing at the age of 24, it's something Dallas has never seen. I've said this internally. He is better than Dirk. He does things Dirk could never do. And now is the opportunity of getting in the right people around him and ultimately winning a championship. No.
Dirk won once, right?
He did.
He got one. Yeah.
Dallas has won 1 NBA championship. That was the Dirk Nowitzki. They beat LeBron James first year.
That was the Dallas Wizards. They had Caron Butler,
Correct.
Brendan Haywood, and Deshaun Stevenson.
Yes. And it was towards the end of the run for Dirk, and he got his.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yes.
Let's see.
Dirk Nowitzki, I'd have to look it up, but he's probably top 10 all-time scoring.
Right.
I'd have to look him up. Luka Doncic, and I was surprised to see the number 24. I didn't realize he's still that young because it feels like he's been around a while, and I would agree he's really, really good. They've gone nowhere in the playoffs.
That's right.
Right. I'm sorry. No.
Dirk was a better leader too. Dirk was the captain. I don't doubt that he's the captain there, but it's that stuff matters.
This is too premature. You can't say things like this.
Yeah, right.
And plus, he's on the same level as MJ.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, and you're saying LeBron. LeBron's won 3 titles with 3 different teams.
LeBron's a 20-time All-Star. He's the all-time leading scorer. He's won championships with 3 different teams.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Right.
He is not on the same level of that. Kobe Bryant won 5 championships. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Come on, man.
Come on, man.
You don't have to
sell me that hard.
You got to stick up for your guy, but not like that.
You could be like, listen, he's really, really, really high-end good. You could be like, he's the best player I've ever coached.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right.
Great.
Right.
Great.
Well, no, because then that opens up another door because wasn't he the Nets coach when all those guys were there
Oh,
too?
yeah, that's right.
So then you're just
forget it.
All you're doing is opening up that door again.
True. But this is ridiculous.
Right.
That's a crazy thing to say.
Yeah.
All right, I'll read you the Pro Ted piece, and then I'll scour social media to see if we have a coach yet. Brave Watch the Show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital. Nothing yet, guys. Nothing yet. Nothing yet. Mike MacDonald is the new head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, which leaves Washington as the only vacancy in the NFL. Let's see. They weren't the first to fire a coach. The Raiders did that. Replaced Josh McDaniels with Antonio Pierce on an interim basis and then ultimately full-time basis. Panthers fired their coach in the middle of the season. But we did so quickly after the season, a couple days after Ron Rivera was
I believe
removed.
Staley was before.
Staley
Ron,
also
I
was
think.
fired mid-season.
Was he mid-season? Oh, yeah, it was
he?
after the Monday night thing. Yeah.
After they lost like 82 to nothing.
No. They fired the GM. Then they fired him
right.
after the season. Well, I forget. Yeah, they fired them both. Sorry. I'm sorry.
I think it was Staley first. It was after that Raiders game where they got embarrassed
Yeah.
bad.
They fired them both. That's what happened. Yep. Because they were just like.
Yeah, that was silly.
They were like, play with some
They were
pride,
like,
guys,
you know
please.
what?
Yeah.
You know what? I think we're going to have to let you go now.
Right.
So we're not the first to let it go, but we are the last to fill it.
Yes.
And clearly, whoever choice one was, and I think we all know who that is, didn't happen.
Right.
Did they put all their eggs in that basket? No. They've said that like all along there was a wide search that they wanted to do, and they were open to a lot of different candidates, and now they got to pick one.
Right.
And some of those ones they were open to have taken other jobs. They did speak to Aaron Glenn yesterday, so that's a possibility. They did speak to Anthony Weaver. That's a possibility. They did speak to Dan Quinn multiple times. It's a possibility.
Right.
Bobby Slowick is off the board now. He's staying in Houston as a coordinator.
Yep.
Redid his contract there. Who am I missing? I'm missing somebody. Eric Bieniemy. They spoke to Eric Bieniemy.
That's right. They did.
We haven't heard much about him becoming the head coach, but they did conduct an interview with him. And then I have not heard that they have spoken to Mike Vrabel.
Right.
I've not
We've
heard that.
Heard nothing on that. Yep.
Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but I have not heard that they have done so. And so it feels like it will be either Dan Quinn or Anthony Weaver, and I do wonder if public sentiment is going to sway them whatsoever, because I think it's irrational that everyone keeps reacting the way they do to Dan Quinn, but they are reacting the way they're reacting to Dan Quinn. And, I wouldn't let that guide you if I'm them. If you think he's the right guy, go hire him, and don't worry about how people react the day after. Like, we'll see you at OTAs. Everybody will be all excited again, you know? But, let's see, because public sentiment of the loud faction on Twitter, and I always hate giving it too much credit, but the loud faction on Twitter has not been overly receptive to this idea from day one, honestly. It's been for a few weeks now. I think everyone assumed it wouldn't be him, but from day one, when people were like, no, he's an actually serious candidate here, including me. I'm like, he's a serious candidate here. I didn't think he'd get the job, but that's what they're saying. Well, I don't know.
What if Josh Harris went back to Ben Johnson and said, what is your asking price?
See, I wonder if that's happening today.
Because
I wonder if it's happening.
There's no
today.
momentum for anybody, and it makes me think there is a option C in terms of their.
I tell you, I mean, I hear you, but to me, it's kind of like I'm not going to ask you twice.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
do you want to marry me? No. What if I gave you this? Well, then yes. That's not a good relationship. His heart tells him not to do it. Okay. So don't do it.
Right.
You're dead to me. It's Mr. Wonderful. You're dead to me. You don't want me in my private jet with Magic Johnson showing up at your house to give you millions of dollars, prestige, and one of 32 jobs in the world. You don't want that. You don't want it?
Yep.
Okay. I can't make you take it. I think it's a bad idea, but, you live your life the way you want to live your life. I think you circle the wagons and you go in a different direction now. He said no. Move on.
Okay. Maybe.
I mean, what is he? Football Jesus? What are we doing here?
Maybe.
Could be.
He apparently
might
was.
not be.
He apparently was if they were waiting him out.
He might not be, though.
Okay. All right,
he might not be.
Just saying.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see what next is. All right. I've been wanting to read this for a couple of days. I noticed this the other day when Ted posted this on LinkedIn. And it's just
I love LinkedIn. That's your favorite social
media
site.
It is my favorite social media site. Anyway, because I like to pretend I'm smart. So, and that's the place where you get to pretend you're smart. You can't be smart on Twitter. If you're smart on Twitter, you're wasting your time.
That's fair. Yeah.
You got to be dumb on Twitter.
That's true.
And every once in a while I feel like I want to be dumb, but not really. This is Washington Business Journal, okay? So serious publication, guys, the type of thing that you put on LinkedIn, not on Twitter.
Right.
Okay? Because the replies on Twitter would be incredible. Just memes of weird cats throwing up on themselves, just stupid things, whatever. Anyway, so it's written by Kathy Hollinger of the Greater Washington Partnership, and it basically is an op-ed in support of what they're trying to do in Virginia with Potomac Yards, to move the Wizards and the Capitals to a new development that will be in Potomac Yards. And I expect a lot of position pieces to occur. Positive and negative. I'm waiting. I haven't read a lot of the Washington Post, but I'm sure their columnists are weighing in on all facets of it. The business part of it, the economic part of it, the DC part of it, and of course the sports part of it. And everybody's got their own opinions about this. You're going to have varying degrees of it. But I noticed this one and I wanted to read it to you because it said a couple of things in here that were very interesting. And then I want you to wait to the end because I don't want to spoil what the end is here. Because I think it's worth hearing the end.
Okay.
She writes this. We're witnessing a rapidly shifting landscape from Baltimore to Richmond with 10 million residents across increasingly diverse communities, cultures, businesses, and educational institutions. The traditional approach to economic growth are no longer sufficient. This is what Ted's been saying for a long time.
Yeah, but he's been saying this since like 2005. We're going on 20 years of this.
He's been saying this.
Sure.
But she's echoing it now.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
She's echoing.
She's
She's saying we're there. He was omniscient.
Yeah.
We're there. Now, for us in our bubble in sports, we've heard him say this. Maybe the greater community hasn't. Here's the Washington Business Journal, a business leadership, this particular publication reaches C-suites of all these people.
Right.
So she's echoing something he's been saying for a long time. Okay.
Yep.
3 months ago, I highlighted the importance of regionalism and the role it must play for Greater Washington to achieve bigger wins in economic growth. Now, in the dawn of a new year, it's more critical than ever. Investors, both public and private, seek broad collaborative approaches that are not bound by traditional geographical lines or political jurisdictions to maximize a return on investment and long-term success.
That sounds familiar.
There's a lot more mumbo jumbo like that I'm not going to bore you with.
Yep.
But you get the point, okay? She's laying the premise of what Ted is doing, okay, is good for everybody, which is the one DMV line that he unveiled last week in his very long letter that he said he was going to take the high road. Okay.
Correct, yes.
So
everything you said is correct so far.
Mumbo jumbo till we get to this point. And I want you to listen closely to this because there's a line in here that got me going, oh, really? Mm-hmm. Perhaps the latest example of this shift is the announcement of a potential agreement to build a new entertainment district in Potomac Yard. The market for major sports franchises is national and fiercely competitive. Monumental Sports and Entertainment opted to keep the Capitals and Wizards in our region, while many other fan bases have watched their beloved teams relocate to faraway states, such as the Oakland Raiders to Las Vegas. Okay. Opted to keep them here. What do you mean by that?
That's right.
Excuse me, lady. Since when were they threatening to move them?
That's right. We've never heard that.
I haven't heard a iota of them threatening to actually move them. Now, we might not be at that state of negotiation because I think Ted truly believes this is going to get pushed through. They are going to move there. He'll take heat for moving them out of downtown D.C., cost of doing business. It's good for him. Thinks it's good for the teams. I think it's good for the teams too. Whatever. I hate that it's happening in downtown D.C., but I understand his point of view, and I understand why he can't turn this deal down. Okay, yep. So I understand all of that stuff, and I'm with him. Not in spirit. If I was sitting in his shoes, I understand what he's doing here. So I'm not, and I also agree. I don't want to go to this PR length of one DMV and regionalism and all this mumbo jumbo that they're pitching out there, but I also do agree that I don't look at Alexandria and think that that's a foreign land. I don't. I think it's part of my community too. Okay. So I agree with, you could disagree, but I agree with all of that stuff. But that really got my ears perked. Why would she even write that it's possible that he could have chosen to do that when he hasn't yet even pulled that lever at all?
Yeah.
And like I said, maybe we're in the state of this where he's going, as long as this keeps going through, I won't mention anything like that.
Yeah.
But if you guys think you're going to get in my way of this happening, well, I'm going to have to think about my options now, aren't I? He hasn't done it. She wrote it, not him.
Right.
But like I said, wait till the end. Because there's an end part of this that will circle this all back around and make you wonder, who wrote this in the first place?
Okay, so on reacting to that, it's funny. This is a good segue. The Orioles clearly jumped through every hoop to get more power, land, money, whatever from Baltimore, right? Everything. Because you and I saw, and thank God for actual journalism of people connecting the dots of John Angelo's fiance, wife, whoever, having all those ties to Nashville. And as I said to you, go look on that Nashville baseball website. The names are huge names, not just nobodies. The pathway was there. but he jumped through every hoop to try to give them an excuse to move.
If baseball expands, Nashville will get a team. They are primed and ready for it.
Exactly.
Yes.
But what ended up happening is there was no excuse for you to move. And then what I just said last segment, or 2 segments ago, was I'm sure behind closed doors, he did go to Manfred and went, if I wanted to move, what's the vibe there? And Manfred's going, dude, we're not moving you guys. You're in the best ballpark that's in between the really old ones and the new ones. You ain't going anywhere. We're not approving that ever. You're a historic franchise. To flip that over to Ted, Adam Silver ain't letting you move a basketball team outside of the city of Washington, D.C.
Correct.
Like the region. Sorry. You know what I mean.
Yeah,
there.
I mean.
Like Virginia's fine. But what I'm
the
getting
Angelos family, or John, got boxed in when baseball told them, you're not going anywhere.
Correct.
And at that point, he lost all leverage and everything.
And Manfred, actually, I forgot. Manfred said that publicly. He was like, we're not even worrying about them until we get Tampa and Oakland figured out.
Correct.
Yeah. So that was actually
we're not
funny.
worried about that because it also was like, they're not in a bad position.
Correct. So what I'm getting at here is Adam Silver ain't letting the NBA pull out of this region. And then you think Gary Bettman is going to let a team move when there are multiple cities talking about expansion? Did you hear about the latest expansion? There was Utah last week that came out. You know what came out today? Atlanta, outside of Atlanta,
I saw that.
Just got approved to build a new arena.
I saw that.
They're going to give Atlanta a third try there.
Third try at this. But they want Atlanta land. They want hockey land.
No, of course. But you think Bettman's going to let you move the hockey team out of this area? No. I don't think so. So,
no.
If that's real, that's ridiculous.
Okay. And again, he didn't write this. This woman wrote this.
Right.
Okay.
Of course.
And then there's a lot more mumbo jumbo.
Yes.
Okay. About why this is good. We got to keep doing this. We got to keep doing this. And then it gets reiterated. This quote: the expansion by Monumental is part of a dynamic trend by trailblazers in sports franchises across the country who want to create world-class experiences for fans, which is. It might as well have been written by a PR person, okay? Then he goes, while the nation is ripe with prospective locations for relocated sports franchises and entertainment districts, Monumental defied the prevailing trend of other free agency teams that disbanded to move far away because it believes in the value proposition of Greater Washington. Where exactly would he take the Capitals that would be better than here?
That's right. Right.
Lady, name me the market you are referring to that the Capitals or Wizards could go to that's better than the Greater Washington market, and it defies everything you've written about what's happening in this region and why it's so great to be here now.
That's where you point to the Raiders and you go, you know what? The Raiders were the unfortunate team. Somebody was moving to Vegas, though, because how did you not move to Vegas?
It was either them or the Chargers.
Right.
I don't think the Chargers ever should have moved out of San Diego, but that's a different story.
100%.
The Raiders, I hate it for their fans, but that decrepit stadium that they had, and unfortunately, like a dwindling situation population-wise out there, it's problematic. And there are 2 teams in that region. No one wants to hear it, but there are 2 teams in that region of the country.
What I'm getting at is Vegas was a hole. Somebody had to fill it. Where's the hockey hole now that we have Utah pining for theirs and Atlanta pining for theirs?
We're moving the Capitals to Atlanta? No, they're not. No, they're not.
Atlanta, Alex.
Let me see. Let me get to the summation part of all this.
Yep.
Here's the summation part of it. While the concept of regionalism has been met by some with skepticism, it is essential to coordinate and foster discussions to meet challenges of our changing economic landscape. And then she just basically goes to talk about the Greater Washington Bureau. And this is my favorite part of the whole thing. So she is the CEO, this is who wrote this, the CEO of the Greater Washington Partnership, which is a nonprofit alliance of employers in Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C., quote, tackling solutions for the region's most critical issues. And underneath it says, editor's note, Monumental Sports and Entertainment CEO Ted Leonsis is a founding member of this.
Got it.
He planted a piece in the Washington Business Journal written by the head of this foundation that hinted, if this doesn't happen, I don't know what I'm going to do, guys.
Oh, my.
And did it get a tremendous amount of circulation? No, it's the Washington Business Journal. But because I go on LinkedIn, because I pretend I'm smart, I saw it. And I read it, and there's it's littered with the mumbo jumbo that you would expect, and you heard a little bit of it. But those parts got me. I went, since when has he even hinted that that's a possibility here?
That's right.
And I don't think it is. And I would just, again, professional advice, and maybe I shouldn't give it to billionaires, but I will in this case. Do not even hint that.
Right.
You think you're getting pushback now?
That's right. Right.
You just wait.
Right.
If you actually even insinuate for 10 seconds that you would consider moving these teams out of this region, which I don't think the NBA or NHL would do.
No chance.
And secondarily, you think you're hearing some criticism now? You just wait. Shut down the call-in lines, Ted, because you are not going to want to hear that reaction.
That's right.
That threat is the nuclear threat. Nobody wants to hear it. It is a public trust. You went on and on in your letter about how you are DC through and through.
That's right.
How you want one DMV, how you love this area, how you want to extend the region. I'm with you on all that stuff. If you say you'd consider moving them out because you don't get Ted land in Virginia, you are the turncoat of turncoats, buddy.
That's right.
And you will land in a space you do not want to be in amid the perception of you as an owner.
Correct.
Do not do that. Do not do that.
Or you're going to turn into an owner of two different teams in two different areas. You're not moving both of them in one place.
No, of course not.
There's no place that exists. That
Neither one are going to be allowed to relocate.
That's right. Right.
Why would they?
Correct.
Why?
That wouldn't be like, what?
I can't even believe how many people still go to all the Wizards games.
I know.
Considering the results for years.
Yes.
And like, this town really likes basketball, and you know it.
Yep. Right. Exactly.
Why would you even? And, for Kathy, I'm sorry you got put up to this. It is as clear as day why you wrote this. And I'm okay with all of the PR spin of why we do this, why we do this, why we do this. Why is this great? Why is this great? Why is this great? But to throw in the insinuations of, other teams have moved out for your greener pastures. What greener pasture are you referring to?
That's right. Right.
We're a top 5 market in the United States who values these teams and supports them.
That's right.
Where in the world would they go that would be better than that?
One of them has literally never won.
Kathy, who's got it better than us? Nobody. I was shocked when I read that. I went, and then I read the editor's note that he's part of this, and I went, he told her to do this. And why would she even put that in there unless there was a tinge of truth to it?
Right.
Don't do it, Ted. If this doesn't politically go your way initially, push through, fight through, but do not pretend you're going to move the teams out of town.
Baltimore Caps.
Old Town Squires. I keep trying to tell you. Old Town Squires.
Neither league would let this happen, especially the NBA. The NBA would never.
They wouldn't even let them move to Baltimore.
You're right.
They'd be like, "Why? It's a smaller city.
That's right.
Why would you do that?
Right.
All the Washington, how are the Washington fans going to go there? That's as dumb as Dumfries for the Commanders. Why would we do that?
Dumfries Capitals.
The dumb caps.
That's funny. Actually,
the dumb caps.
The dumb caps.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say on the jersey. Dumb caps.
The Richmond Capitals.
I mean. Listen, that is the capital. So,
ew.
Old Town Squires is a good name. I know
Richmond
it's
Wizards.
To you.
Might need to change the name on that one.
Old Town Squires.
Yeah.
Again, you would go to a smaller market that is not really accessible to the fan base that lives here. Why would you even consider this? Which means if you're talking relocation, you're talking real relocation. Exactly where are you referring to?
Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
I mean, you could go. I'm just trying to think of who doesn't have a hockey team, but they're all southern cities where you're
Utah.
You're not touching. What either way? They want an expansion team.
That's can't have the Utah Wizards. You can't. You just can't.
Why not?
Explain that. So many reasons. You cannot have the Utah Wizards. You just can't.
There's Utah Jazz. There's no Jazz in Utah.
There are Wizards in Utah. You just can't go there with that name.
South Dakota Wizards.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
North Dakota Caps.
So anyway, I absolve you because I know you didn't write this. But once I saw that editor's note, I went, huh. I expect plant pieces. I expect spin pieces.
Sure.
I expect PR to be out there, and I expect all the local journalists to weigh in on this economically, politically, financially, and from a sports perspective. I expect everybody to do that. Everybody will weigh in, and that's healthy debate and conversation. I don't mind plant pieces. I could see them from a mile away like this one.
That's right.
Don't do it. Don't even hint that you might do something like that. I'm just telling you as a friend and a colleague and how much I love you. If you do that, everyone's going to turn on you in a way that you cannot believe.
Right.
If you start pretending like you're going to move the teams out of here.
Because then you really have the people
and we know you're pretending, by the way, because you're not going anywhere. The leagues may not let you go, and you have nowhere to go, so don't do it.
Also,
don't do it.
For if you were to say that, the fans that whose nights got 30 minutes longer going to games and coming back are going, that ain't worth my time anymore for when you do move.
Right.
So tread lightly from here on out.
Tread lightly.
As we know, it didn't come from his mouth directly.
Correct.
But
I didn't say it. Don't say I said it. I know you didn't. You shouldn't have put that editor's note in, though, because then I found out where that came from.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And your Capitals fans have been hugely loyal for the last 20 years, basically.
Uh-huh.
And you're going to not alienate, but it's going to be harder for a lot of your fan base from Montgomery County to get to games now. You probably want to be nicer to them.
Don't
because
do it.
They're going to cancel their season tickets maybe regardless. Now they're really going to cancel their season tickets if you say something like that.
You're going to get to sell the team signs. And you know what? Like, if you even do that and then knowing how you react to things, that is going to go very poorly. Very, very poorly.
Well, you're not getting those past security.
I love Ted. Very thin-skinned. Very thin-skinned. I love him, though, and I actually find it endearing. If he'd be willing to laugh at himself ever, he'd probably enjoy the jokes I have for him about it, but he doesn't. So,
The Richmond Go-Go.
Oh.
The Utah Go-Go.
I'd buy season tickets to the Utah Go-Go.
There's two forms of music that have nothing to do with the region.
Do people walk around during the entire game in front of the court when you're sitting courtside if you're at the Utah Go-Go games?
Well, there's not enough people there for Go-Go games, but.
All right, we'll see. I'm on to you, Ted. Don't start it. Maybe you'll get your wish in Virginia and it won't be a problem. But if you don't go nuclear. Whatever you do, don't go nuclear.
I'm actually, now that I'm thinking about it out loud, I'm actually shocked, if he did really love downtown D.C., why he didn't try to pull Commanders and say to Virginia, hey, do you want to build a whole new headquarters for the Monumental Network, a new practice facility for the Caps, a new practice facility for the Wizards, so the employees are all out there, but not on game nights, and then we'll still build an amphitheater, we'll build an area where people can still go eat and drink and all that other stuff. It's monumental land, but the games still happen downtown, not unlike the Commanders do. They practice in Virginia and they play right outside the city.
That's a good idea.
But I'm gonna
call
guess
Muriel about that one.
I'm gonna guess though Virginia was going, we don't want all of that and not get the games. I'm gonna guess that's how that went.
Correct.
But I'm just saying, I think
you can't build an entertainment district and not have the anchor of the games.
No, I agree. But what I would say though is part of the big tax revenue is having the players live in Virginia. I mean, you get to scrape all of that off a little bit. So I'm just saying, maybe that could have gone over a little bit better.
Yeah, it could have.
And then you do the overlay with how much space you're getting, and then you should have just led with that because I think everyone would have understood.
I agree.